right, good evening. Thank you for tuning in to tonight's live stream. Gordon Fawsey, as is always the case, and as is almost always the case, Candy the Wonder Pup as well. Candy the Wonder Dog, 5 years old. Got to stop calling her a puppy. She wants her treat. Shake, lay down, sleep. She wants it. There she goes. Candy is now happy. Uh, Today we are Thursday, the 6th of March, 2025. It's 9, according to my computer, 9:23. No, it's not a bacon. I didn't give her a bacon treat. No bacon strip. Tonight it was just your regular old milk bone dog biscuit. I hope everyone who shows up, I hope you have your coffee. I hope you're going to enjoy a nice, lively chat, as is often the case. I won't say always, but I enjoy them. And I enjoy dissecting the news of the day and the news story sucking all the oxygen out of the room in my native Canada, certainly, is the looming trade war. As a matter of fact, most would say it has already started, a trade war between Canada and the US. And here I am, I'm wearing something I've worn before on my streams, the Chicago Bears football. It's not a jersey, just a sweater with the Chicago on them. I've worn it before. It's something I was given. And for the first time, I decided to check, where was it made? Because I work in a retail establishment right now, and I've spent the past couple of days dealing with customers coming in and being hyper vigilant in wanting to check the country of origin for anything and everything they are buying. They even now have an app on cell phones where you scan either the UPC code or the logo or whatever, and it'll tell you where the country of origin is. And someone was unpleased to find out that something was not Canadian and was going to not purchase that particular item until they found out, oh, wait, it's from France. The country of origin is French. France, not Quebec, France. And oh, okay, I guess that's okay, she said. And she, took the item for purchase. And it's blowing my mind, the degree to which it is so easy to herd the population. Before I really get rolling on things, I want to remind everyone who's watching, I'm trying some new things on my podcast stream, whatever you want to call this. Right now, I think I'm broadcasting over 3 platforms. Facebook, through my profile, which is Gordy Canuck, Gordie, Canuck, Canuck, and the same name, Gordy Canuck, on Twitter, but Canuck is spelled Canuk. I left out a C. I set that up years ago when Twitter first started, long before Elon Musk came along. I have Danny saying, this is cute, picked up 4 bottles of bourbon just in case. I think in many jurisdictions you would have a hard time finding some Jack Daniels, which is a famous. I think that's bourbon. It's funny, if you say you want whiskey in Canada, you're most likely going to get rye whiskey. If you say if you ask for whiskey in Britain, in India, in a lot of countries more aligned with Britain, you're going to get Scotch whiskey. And if you're in the United States, you're going to get bourbon. And I tend to, when it comes to harshness, I tend to put Scotch as smooth, Canadian rye whiskey, Canadian Club, Crown Royal in the middle, and then harsh stuff is bourbon. And right now in Ontario, my native Ontario, my understanding is that the LCBO, the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, which operates all of the province's liquor stores, the only places you can go to buy hard booze, like rye, rum, vodka, that kind of thing. The only place you can go is to the liquor store or the LCBO. It'll people in Ontario will half the time they'll say I'm going to the LCBO, half the time they say liquor store. Actually, most people say LCBO, I believe. Koj Malik from the great state of Texas is here. I've got a bit of news as well before I really get rolling. I was chatting over Instant Messenger on Facebook this evening with a gentleman who I have known since my days growing up in Glen Rock, New Jersey, going back to the 1970s. We went through grade 2, 3, 4 together before my family moved back to Canada. And David and I have we went our separate ways. And last time I saw him face to face would have been 1978 or 1979 when my family took a trip back to New Jersey. And I met up again with David, and we visited my old haunts. He was gracious enough to endure my curiosity for a couple of days, going down to the old school, the old church, the old this, the old that. And John 5 is here. And as well, good evening to you. And likewise, I have I have JCP here. And he is saying, he's echoing my sentiments. Good to have someone in agreement with me, but if you're not, that's okay too. I want to hear everyone's point of view. John is saying, good evening. No, sir, I won't comply. I'll buy whatever I want. And that is basically my attitude, is I'm going to be buying. I'm not going to be altering my behavior. I'm not going to be like Candy the Wonder Pup with a treat. I'm not going to be adhering to the government and media mandate to buy Canadian, only buy Canadian. I'm not playing this game. I am not playing this game. And it's difficult to try and frame it this way because it's reminding me very much of the way I call it groupthink. And we are being conditioned now that good Canadians will buy Canadian, and that we'll be hyper concerned over the country of origin, over all our purchases. I like what Danny's saying, that he's tempted to seek out products that are made in the USA. And I have Koj Malik saying that she is altering. Koj Malik is down in Florida, and she said that Target looked like a ghost town on February 8th. Can you tell me what is happening down in the United States in this respect, and why would Target be poor, no pun intended? Why is that store being targeted for people not to go to? In Canada, where there was a move, and I think it happened last week, or there was a specific day on which Canadians were being told to stay away from all stores that are not that are American-based stores. And I'm not playing this game. I talk about the fact that people are easy to herd around. Propaganda works, and I'm equating it, a lot of it, to what we saw in the COVID era. In the COVID era, even before the mandates came down in late February, early March, they started to recommend things like social distancing and limiting your contacts. People were being encouraged not to go on that spring break holiday or reading week holiday down to Fort Lauderdale or Daytona Beach or wherever, because at that point it was merely it was being called the novel coronavirus. They hadn't ramped up the propaganda, and they hadn't yet started calling it the deadly coronavirus. It was merely the novel coronavirus, but that with commentary that said, and it's called the novel coronavirus because the immune system just doesn't know how to deal with this. And there were early compliers. There were early compliers even before mandates came out. There were people wearing masks long before they were ever required, and who were all in on the messaging. But that wasn't enough. Eventually, mandates were brought down. Stay-at-home orders were put in place, shelter in place. The abuse, lock yourself down with your abusers, and all the rest. That became mandatory, and of course, masks became mandatory, and everything became mandatory. But initially, much of it started out as voluntary and based on a lot of propaganda that was saying that COVID is more than 10 times deadlier than the seasonal flu, more than 10 times. It's exponentially worse than seasonal flu, and seasonal flu had killed close to 10,000 Canadians one year recently, like in 2018 or 2019. So more than 10 times worse, we're talking 100,000. And people were scared. Now, this is something interesting. John Fives is writing that it seems part of Tim Hortons is owned by America and Brazil. That would be hard to boycott. That occurred to me. Is the fact that I believe Tim Hortons, I haven't checked into it, but I believe that they are owned by a hedge fund, and that hedge fund is foreign based. I don't know whether it's hedge funds or, where's the hedge fund located? A hedge fund is basically like a mutual fund. They take an investment from all manner of different, they just take an investment. People invest in a hedge fund, and then the managers of that fund buy things like a Tim Hortons, like Burger King, like whatever. They buy franchises and other things. And hedge funds are pretty much like a mutual fund. Same idea. The only difference is a hedge fund can go short. They can take out a short position on stocks, and they can use leverage, meaning that they can borrow money to increase their reach in the financial markets. But I need to check into that, because when you get a cup of Tim Hortons, it has in the lid the maple leaf is part of the design on the lid of a Tim Hortons cup. So I have Kojay Malik with respect to saying that Target looked like a ghost town. She's saying it has to do with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What many people say means did not earn it. And she goes on, I stopped buying from places I felt disrespected or merely tolerated. Well, I think that's, if I went into a store, now I know Kojay Malik, her picture doesn't give it away too much. Kojay Malik is a Black American living down in Florida, and is someone who I would say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kojay Malik, in my representation, but who is someone who comes at things from the perspective of someone who grew up in the racist southern US. But irrespective of that, irrespective of any racial component, if I went into a store and felt that I was being disrespected, tolerated, put up with for whatever reason, because I'm Canadian, because I'm bald, because of whatever reason, well, I wouldn't go there either. And this is beautiful. Danny's writing, Trudeau can kiss my grits. For those of you who remember the old Alice TV show. Kojay Malik is writing, Jeff Bezos said a boycott wouldn't hurt him. My ears heard. Challenge received, challenge accepted. Bezos, he's the owner of Amazon, is he not? Great business model. All he does, he's the clearinghouse. So he doesn't make the products. They just ship through Amazon. Amazon is a platform. If I'm right, that Bezos is the one who owns Amazon, which incidentally, if anyone cares, I do not even have an Amazon account. I've never received any delivery at my house from Amazon. However, I have to admit, I'm not perfect. Big surprise. But no, I have had friends when I've needed a product. The first time I got something through Amazon, I got it through my next door neighbor. I needed tennis balls. At that particular time in COVID, you weren't allowed to buy tennis balls because tennis balls were non-essential. If you wanted tennis balls, you had to get them through Amazon. I don't have an Amazon account. My neighbor graciously said, if you want, I'll just give me the cash and I'll order them for you. And that's what he did. And I've done a couple other purchases that way with items that are not readily available uh, on a retail basis, a replacement part for my stove. You can only get it through Amazon, blah, blah, blah. HM is here. Heather, I don't understand why Canadians continue to be taken in by current lies of care for Canada by Liberals. All they did was divide our nation for the past 9 years. Now they are dividing America and Canada. A house united cannot stand. And this uh, it was interesting. I was speaking to a colleague today who was equally frustrated with all these. You need to have better signs so that we know what's Canadian. I don't know what's Canadian here. I don't want to buy anything from America. And equally vexed by this same, sheep mentality. Well, the TV told me to only buy Canadian, and I listen to the TV and to the politicians and to the government officials, and whatever they tell me to do, I do. That's why I'm on booster number 5. And she was equally frustrated. But then she said, but, I've got to be nice. I can't be I can't tell her what I can't tell these people what I really think. And I said to my colleague, I said, not me. I'm telling people what I think. And I had a few people. I've got to tread lightly because it's very much like the COVID era when people were told you have to wear a mask. And if you saw what happened to people who didn't wear a mask. Some would directly confront, other people would go to someone, they'd go to a store manager. You need to force everyone to wear a mask. It's the rules. You need to tell everyone to buy Canadian. It's the rules. If I was watching Melanie Joly, um, and I forget what her portfolio. The Canadian cabinet, around the cabinet table with the prime minister, are about 35 people. There are 35 cabinet postings in the Canadian government. 30 or 35, somewhere 31, 32, 33, somewhere between 30 and 35. It's insane. And Melanie Joly, um, she has something to do with U.S. American relations or external trade or something. It's insane, again, the number of ministries there are. But she was on CNN and she was talking about how disastrous tariffs are going to be on the American consumer because so many of the things that Americans buy rely on, they come from Canada. Well, if that's the case, Melanie and everyone else, if that's the case, that the tariffs that Trump is putting in place are going to be horrendous on American consumers, why then does Canada have to retaliate? Yes, I am aware that when your biggest trading partner takes action that is going to impact the amount of goods and products and minerals and everything else that we ship down to the US, that when it's going to be costing 25% more, that it very much has the potential, and not just potential, it's pretty much a slam dunk. It's going to have an impact on Canadians. It's going to impact our employment situation. If you work in the forestry industry, say in British Columbia, and now your softwood lumber is has a 25% tariff placed on it, American users, American importers of Canadian softwood lumber may start to look for American sourced softwood lumber. Why are we getting it from British Columbia? Let's see if we can we get it from Washington? Can we get it from Oregon? Can we get, will it be cheaper? And if it is, they will. And that'll impact us. But by introducing reciprocal tariffs, what Trudeau, Mark Carney, our liberal overlords are going to do is they're going to drive inflation up in this country. And it's going to be far worse for Canada than it is for the United States. I've got Danny asking, he always does this, off-topic questions. Wouldn't Ford cutting, that's not off-topic. Wouldn't Ford cutting off electricity be considered an act of war by the US? Is he thinking straight? I have mentioned this before in previous streams about the fact that for now, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, for my American friends, and I mean that genuinely, friends, for my American friends, our Premier, what we call a Premier, is the equivalent of a governor of a state. Ontario is a province. Think of it as a state. A state has a governor, a premier, or a province has a premier. And Doug Ford had mused openly about cutting off electricity, as Danny mentioned. However, since then, he is talking about a 25% excise duty. So whatever we send down to the US is actually going to cost Americans 25% more. It's not a tariff, it's more of an excise duty, meaning it's added to the cost of what's going across the border. So you buy 1 million megawatt hours, whatever it is, $10 million worth of electricity from the province of Ontario. Now it's going to cost $1,250,000. And obviously, some, if not all, at least some of that cost is going to be passed on to consumers. There are reports out that in border states like Michigan, which gets a lot of its electricity from the province of Ontario, that lanterns, as one item, if you go into Home Depot, you cannot find a lantern anywhere. They've been wiped off the shelf. As for what Danny says about it being considered an act of war, yeah, I talked about electricity and nickel, because that's been the other item, the other product, mineral that Ford has talked about. He's talked about placing an embargo on Ontario mine nickel and not allowing it to cross into the United States. So now a tariff that the tariffs that that Donald Trump, I got to get my name straight, the 25% tariff that Donald Trump has initiated means that the importer in the United States, the companies importing, so a company bringing in 1 million tons worth of nickel or whatever into the United States, that importer has to pay the Canadian supplier, the mining company, say they pay $1 million for a load of Canadian nickel, then that importer has to pay the US federal government to a $250,000 tariff, 25%. And but Ford is now talking about embargoing and not allowing any Ontario mine nickel to go into the United States. And nickel is a major component of batteries. It's involved in the automotive industry, and I need to get on to that because we've gotten a 1 month reprieve for the automotive sector and for anything else that is under the umbrella of the previously negotiated United States Mexico Canada Free Trade Agreement. When Donald Trump, his administration, 2016-2020, when they renegotiated the North American Free Trade Agreement into the US Mexico Canada Free Trade Agreement. And now anything that falls under the umbrella of that trade agreement has been given a 1 month reprieve, roughly, not quite a month. And the tariffs are slated to come into effect on those items as well on April 2nd. Trump said he wanted to do it on April 1st, and it's costing billions of dollars, but I didn't want to do it on April 1st. I didn't want people to think it was an April Fool's joke. He even he touched on it during his State of the Union address the other night. So let me catch up because there are lots of messages coming in. Everyone's saying hi. Everyone's saying hi back and forth. And Danny, just as you saw the vast majority of people wearing masks because it was required, now they feel they are being required to buy Canadian, and they are at times of war. And people are buying hook, line, and sinker that this is a trade war, the same way they bought hook, line, and sinker the notion that there was a global major health crisis going on. Everyone believed it. Perception and reality. What perception becomes reality. If everyone thinks it, and if you don't go along with the herd, if you went somewhere not wearing a mask, you know what it was like not to follow the herd. I have shown many times, and I don't have it around anymore, the little plastic thing I wore called the mingle mask. It was a flimsy little piece of plastic that sat on it had a little chin, I'll call it a chin rest to keep it off your face. Just a little piece of plastic secured like a mask. Half the time people wouldn't even know I was wearing a mask because you could see through the thing. And I got stink eye. I had people say, oh, you have to wear a mask. And I tap it. And oh, one of those. Oh, geez, what a moron. And it's not even a proper mask. There's some guy with his hanging down below his nose that he touches 15 times every hour. But enough on that. And then we have HM writing Trump derangement, and Danny TDS. Trump derangement syndrome is in full force. And I was mentioning how when I was confronted with people who say, oh, we have to buy Canadian. And I said, to be entirely honest, I said, I'm not going along with any of this. And she was somewhat taken back, but Trump is evil. And I said, fair enough. I said, that's the popular view right now. I said, when I check out what they're saying on CBC, CTV, and Global, that's the impression I get. I said, but I don't have television. I had a lengthy conversation with this woman. I keep expecting to be reprimanded at work for having these divergent little conversations with customers, but nothing's happened yet, thankfully. But I explained to her that I don't have television, I don't have cable or satellite yet. When there's news percolating, when everyone's talking about something and it's of interest to me, I said I will go onto the computer, I will go to CBC, CTV Global, I want to hear how it's being reported, but I also go to CNN, Fox, NBC, MSNBC. I go to Al Jazeera. I'll check out the Young Turks. I try to get as many differing perspectives as I can before I formulate an opinion. And I said, right now, I get it. The Canadian mainstream legacy media is instructing Canadians to hate Trump and to view him as, deranged, and evil. And I said, Problem is that's not my view. There are some things about that Donald Trump has done that I genuinely like. Some things I do not like. I do not like these tariffs being imposed on Canada to the extent that I think fair enough. You want to promote American business, American industry. God bless you. It's your country. Do what you like. If you want to promote your businesses and put tariffs on foreign-based products, goods, and or I shouldn't say services. You don't export services, but you want to do that. The only thing is, from a business perspective, businesses like predictability, and rather than slamming 25% all at once, not that it would ever happen. There's no way in God's green earth that Donald Trump is ever going to call me or I'm ever going to get a chance to give him my thoughts. But I would, do it incrementally, 2.5% every 6 months. So in the first year, that would be 5%. Take 5 years to bring in a 25% tariff, or you know, do it 5% every 6 months, and then 2.5 years, you've got your 25% tariff. But whatever the case, I'm not going to be playing along and being hyper concerned for proverbial whats and giggles. When I put on this shirt, realizing, hey, a Canadian wearing a Chicago, an NFL team, there are no Canadian teams in the NFL. Let me take a sip of my coffee to lubricate my vocal cords a bit. Um, I decided to check, where was this made. I expected to see that it was made in China. I was close. Indonesia. Wasn't made in Canada or the US, but Canada, we don't have a textile industry anymore because we gave it away with free trade. And this is the thing I've mentioned before on my station, is that in 1988, when Canada first signed on to the first US-Canada free trade agreement, later in 1994 expanded to include Mexico, and it became known as NAFTA. But in 1988, when we entered the free trade agreement with the United States of America, we ceded our economic sovereignty. And it was predicted back then that once we, if we're going to hand over our economic sovereignty, at some point in the future, our political sovereignty would follow. And here we are 37 years later. And getting back to Danny's remark about a declaration of war, if Doug Ford follows through on his promise and embargoes nickel from going down into the US, and Doug Ford does not care that there's been a reprieve for the auto sector and for other industries that are covered under the US Mexico Canada Free Trade Agreement. Pardon all my coughing. There. Regardless, he's going to continue to he's placing an embargo. No Ontario nickel is going to be allowed into the US. Well, apparently, according to everything I'm reading, roughly 50% of the nickel used in the United States of America is sourced from Ontario mines. And what is that going to do to the United States? For all manner of industries, including the arms industry. They're not going to be able to function without Ontario nickel unless they can get alternative sources from other countries, because the US itself only has one functioning operational nickel mine, Eagle Mines in Michigan, and it doesn't have a sufficient supply to give them everything they need. So could the American administration, could Americans in general be propagandized into viewing Canada as having declared war on the United States of America? And I think that is very much a possibility. And I further think that such a situation arising would be applauded in Davos, Switzerland, by our friends, SIC, SIC, friends at the World Economic Forum. I think we're playing right into their hands. As a matter of fact, I think we are being directed. And that is why Canada is being exhorted, why Canadians are being exhorted to, hate on our American friends. And I'm here to say, as one Canadian, I don't hate your president, and I don't hate you. Doug Ford has been on CNN and NBC. He's been doing the circuit. Or Doug Ford, a former high school drug dealer who was vaulted into becoming Ontario's top politician by the fact that the media did a hatchet job. They kneecapped the man who was supposed to be Canada's or Ontario's next premier. That man was Patrick Brown. He was supposed to be our next premier. And then CTV News went to air with allegations that he had sexually assaulted two women years ago. And those allegations later turned out to be demonstrably false. And they should have been known to be, if CTV had engaged in proper journalistic ethics, they never could have gone to air. But then we don't have journalistic ethics in Canada at all. That is why we had CBC News in Edmonton showing a phony picture. They showed a mannequin hooked up to an ICU during COVID. The backdrop at Edmonton CBC News that they showed on their screen showed a patient hooked up to a ventilator. Only it wasn't a patient, it was a mannequin. And it is only thanks to eagle-eyed observers of the news realized they did screen captures, looked closely, and realized, wait a minute, that's not a patient, that's a mannequin. And CBC News was forced to go to air and to issue an apology saying it was a mistake, an error. We breached journalistic ethics. We made a mistake. It was an error in judgment. And I'm here to tell you that it was not a mistake and it was not an error. They did it on purpose. We don't get journalism in Canada anymore. They don't get it much in the US either. Pretty much the same. You're only given one point of view. When Wayne Gretzky was getting crapped all over because he gave the American bench a thumbs up when he came out for the puck drop, and he wasn't wearing the Team Canada jersey, he was wearing a suit. And CBC News did a show on it. They did a news segment on it, and they only spoke to people who were mad at Wayne Gretzky. They didn't present the other side. They didn't talk to me or anyone like-minded with me who would say, no big deal. Wayne's a Canadian icon. He's the greatest offensive talent the game of hockey has ever seen. And he's been a stalwart supporter and amazing ambassador, not just for the game of hockey, but for Canada. Leave it alone. That's what I would have said. But they didn't talk to me or anyone like me. No one presenting the alternative point of view. And this is something Canadians need to wake up to, and they won't. I realize I'm a voice in the wilderness. No one's going to hear me. I don't have any delusions of grandeur that all of a sudden my voice is going to go out loud and clear like a trumpet call throughout the whole nation. Not going to happen. I'm a voice in the wilderness, and that's fine. But I'm still going to speak. I'm going to speak truth. And the truth is that the journalistic ethics in Canada are gone. There are no ethics anymore. It's all about pushing a narrative. It's all about propaganda. Let me catch up with what's being said. HM is writing, Canada is not that bright. 40 million cannot compete with 400 million. It's not quite that many, but your point is well made. Like Trudeau's father said, we live next door to an elephant. That was one famous quote. And another one is that when the United States sneezes, Canada catches a cold. And we're talking tough. We're talking tough. You're going to hurt us. We're going to hurt you. And this is just, I'm here to tell you, this is just the WEF playbook. This is just the WEF playbook. Yet people who should be allied with each other, hating on each other. It's like the fans of Hulk Hogan and the fans of, I don't know, Andre the Giant. And they hate each other and are beating the crap out of each other. Meanwhile, Andre and the Hulk are backstage having a beer together, laughing. They're friends. This is a show. Welcome to the show, friends. Welcome to the theater. And I'm supposed to hate on my American friends. I'm supposed to hate Donald Trump. Absolutely. And I don't hate him. I don't love him, but I don't hate him. Some things I like, some things I don't like. Welcome to life. But that's not the way it works. During the COVID era, you're only allowed to think one thing: deadly coronavirus, deadly, deadly, deadly. You have to take your brain, park it at the side, and just do as you're told. Follow the stickers on the floor. Follow stickers on the floor. Dougie, his daddy, Dougie Ford's daddy, his big business. He had a company that made it was called Deco labels, and they made things like stickers for the floor or made in Canada stickers. Guess who's going to be making lots of money? Deco labels will be making. They made a ton of money during COVID. Now all they got to do is start pumping out those proud to be made in Canada stickers or whatever. And idiotic Canadians will lap it up like candy in her treats. Uh, we in many ways we are already the 51st state. We're behaving like the 51st state. What do you mean we can't sell our products into your country? We're part of your country. We're one of your states. How dare you? It's a foreign country. The United States is a foreign country, and they are our friends. Even if they decide they want to build up their own industry, their own workforce, their own steel, their own aluminum, maybe they want to develop some nickel mines. Apparently, there are nickel deposits elsewhere in the United States. However, due to regulatory barriers, it's basically impossible to start a nickel mine in the United States. I've done some reading on this, and it's nigh on impossible to get a mine started in the United States of America. I'm at the 42-minute mark, and it's as good a time as any to remind anyone, thanking everyone for all filling up the live chat and for um, engaging with me. If you're not subscribed to my station, I think I'm broadcasting on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. And I'm looking to expand my reach. Voice in the wilderness. Well, maybe I can make the wilderness a little bit bigger than it is. I'll never be as big. I'll never have the reach of CBC Global CTV, but you know, I do enjoy this, and I don't have a perfect track record. I make predictions. They have not always come true. Sometimes they have, sometimes they have not. I predicted that Kamala Harris was going to be installed, that Joe Biden was either going to pass away, or that they were going to invoke whatever amendment it is in the U.S. Constitution that would have allowed Biden to be pushed aside so that Kamala Harris could have been installed. I thought that was going to happen, a few weeks before the election, so she would be running as the incumbent. I was wrong. I'll own my mistakes or my failed predictions, but I've also had things right. I have Danny writing that liberals are like Christmas lights. Half of them don't work. The other half really aren't that bright. And that, unfortunately, that's also Canadians writ large. Most Canadians, regardless of political stripe, are going along with this. And the thing was, the people like me and others here who are on the chat who are saying that they're not, they're not playing this game. They're not going to, bark like a dog at their speak, buy Canadian, and they're, going to behave as normal, or maybe even seek out stuff bought in the U.S. to kind of, give a little middle finger to the masters of this whole agenda. We're the quiet ones typically, because the individuals who are going along with everything, they feel emboldened. They are sure they are right. They're doing what their masters have told them. They're getting an A+ on their exam paper, so they're right. They know they're right, and so that and they get reinforcement on the nightly news about how right they are, and so they're incredibly arrogant, bold, and they know the facts, and anyone who doesn't go along with their version of the facts, which has been fed into them through propagandistic media, it's hard to go up against them. I had a fruitful conversation with a woman today, telling her, but it took a long time. Breaking down propaganda takes a long time. I said to her, I don't, I don't watch the news. I seek out alternative viewpoints. I know that I'm supposed to, according to all the reporting, I'm supposed to hate Donald Trump, but I don't. I said, there are many things he's done that I actually like. He recognizes and has signed it, into legislation and executive order, the fact that the United States only recognizes two genders. I said, that's incredible to me. It took an executive order to recognize the fundamental fabric of reality, that there are men and that there are women. Thankfully, this was an older woman. She's, well, yeah. And I said, I also like the fact that in his first term, he canceled the Trans-Pacific trade deal. These free trade agreements are a race to the bottom. They don't allow a country to protect a country to protect its own economic interests. When we signed the free trade agreement with the U.S. back in 1988, we ceded our economic sovereignty, and I was opposed to it. She goes, well, I was against free trade then too. And I said, and Trump. And she said, well, you're making me think of this a little differently. I said, if you watch the news, they're only going to give you one side of the story, and that's not journalism. And I think she went away thinking a little. I think she went away going, well, he's wrong, but I don't have the capacity to combat his arguments. His arguments are compelling, but I just don't have the news I'll go home, watch the news tonight, and the news will reinforce the propaganda. It's almost an unwinnable battle, but I'm still going to fight it. And I'm still going to talk to everyone who comes in to the place where I work and is all, oh, I got to buy Canadian. I've had one guy, his head was shaking. But you go, because this guy came in and he was mad that you need to have signs up because this thing said made in Canada, but I checked on my phone and it's not. It says it's from the US. I said, okay. I said, personally, I don't really care. And his head literally started to shake. This is a couple days ago before, I haven't had as much time to develop but like I say, it takes time. It takes time to break down the propaganda. Try and get someone to not follow the stickers on the floor. Try and get someone to take the diaper off their face, the one that they've been wearing. I was talking to a guy at work today who's been getting sick repeatedly over and over and over again. And he wears a mask still, not all the time, but sometimes. And he started wearing a mask again. And I said, are you sick? And he said, no, I just can't afford to get sick. I've been sick 3 times in the last couple months. And, I'm just anything. And I said, how many you got the COVID shots, right? And he goes, oh yeah. And he goes, I said, how many did you get? He said, well, I got the 2 and then I've had 3 or 4 boosters. And I said, I've had none. I didn't get one. He goes, yeah, you said that. And I'm like, I never get sick. And he goes, well, maybe I should have read more on it, but I was just scared like everyone back then. It's insane what's going on. Let's see what Danny's writing. American nickel, 5-cent coins are made of something nickel alloy, 75% copper, 25% nickel, and the same alloy is used for dimes, quarters, half dollars, and some. Yeah, there's no more silver. I was showing it. I actually now have two. I have actual silver dimes, American dimes. These are made with actual silver. They're 1965, both of them. They've moved to cheaper and cheaper alloys because nickel and silver especially are through the roof. This is where has more silver content in it than a dime. More than 10 cents worth of silver content is in a dime. Not that, you know, it might be worth 17 cents, 16 cents. I mean, I'm not getting rich, but whatever the case. Um, so nickel is used in U.S. currency. And getting back to what you said, Danny, about the potential for a declaration of war, and do you think Canada could withstand U.S. military force if they decide to occupy us? They just have to walk in. There's nothing we could do to stop them. We do not have the military, you know, to stop the Americans, and they already have personnel at bases all across Canada. We have bases all over Petawawa, Bagotville, Meaford, Kingston, North Bay, Winnipeg, Shiloh, Edmonton, Esquimalt, bases. I don't know how many bases there are in Canada, but there are dozens, and all the way up to Alert. And those bases have U.S. military personnel at them. They just fly in a Chinook. They fly in one of their planes, an armored troop carrier, or rather a troop carrying plane, and have they would easily be able to match our entire military force and just have them come and occupy us. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And they could say it's in our vital strategic interests of protecting American safety. We have to secure access to Canadian nickel and other Canadian resources that they're embargoing from us, that they're not sending to us. We can't supply the American arms industry that keeps us safe without nickel from Canadian mining operations, and they've embargoed it. You know, we're refusing to sell it to them, regardless of the price. The tariffs that Trump put in place are going to impact American consumers, not Canadians. Now, Canadians, our idiotic government that thinks that, you know, forget it. This is not David and Goliath, because we're not David. We do not have God at on our side. We do not have a slingshot, or we've got a slingshot and no stones, or stones and no slingshot. We're just puffing out our chest, and this is not going to end well. Yeah, the sheep will say, bah. Okay, we have Sheriff of Utah, who is Canadian born. We are no longer in control or represented by our government. I am happy with Trump tariffs because they're waking people up out of their perfect libtard world. Well, I'm not getting anyone who's, you know, it's so funny. You know, I come onto my YouTube channel, I go into Facebook, and I get lots of reinforcement. I got one bit of pushback on Facebook, one small bit of, and the one bit of pushback I got, someone wrote sarcastically, "Oh, just love your patriotism." And that's the only pushback I've seen so far. Otherwise, the overwhelming majority of people I speak to, either here on YouTube or through social media, they're saying they're agreeing with me. And the thing is, when I'm out in public and in a large retail establishment, dealing with people on a day-to-day basis, as I do, the overwhelming consensus that I hear is, "Oh, we got to buy Canadian. Everyone got to buy Canadian. Gotta boycott those horrible Americans. Trump has to be stopped. He's Hitler. Oh yeah, everyone's Hitler. Putin is Hitler. Trump is Hitler. Yeah, everyone's Hitler. Uh, and Danny's agreeing with Sheriff of YouTube. And HM is agreeing, loves the Americans. I love my American friends. I love the American Constitution. It is such a much, it's not perfect, but it's probably the closest to, in terms of a political document, it's probably the closest to perfection that's ever been created. Inalienable rights, not rights that are, we'll call them rights, but they're really just privileges. Look at our Canadian Charter of Rights, not rights. Our charter is the Charter of Privileges that we can take away. All we have to do is say emergency and we take it away. And I should cover off one point. The is going on and on and on about the fentanyl crisis, about the amount of fentanyl coming into the United States from Canada and the US. And it's under that pretext that he is imposing these tariffs. And there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is to impose tariffs absent an emergency. Tariffs can only be approved by Congress. It would have to be an act of government. Trump could not unilaterally, by executive action, institute tariffs unless there was an emergency. So, in order to bypass the Congress, he is justifying the tariffs by citing fentanyl as a crisis emergency situation, and that allows him to bypass the U.S. Congress. And that's an internal matter for the United States to deal with. It's their constitution, it's their country. They can deal with it as however they best see fit. It's not for a Canadian to say how the Americans should run their democracy. But do I think Trump genuinely sees fentanyl as a crisis? I think he does. Is it enough to warrant these actions? I think he would want to do, if fentanyl, if all of a sudden fentanyl dried up into zero, I think he would find another pretext to impose the tariffs. I don't think the two are linked other than by necessity. Just my opinion. Danny saying Americans are good people, period. The overwhelming majority are. Sorry, American friends, you do have some jerks in your country. But nobody here. Everyone tuning into my stream from the United States, they're all amazing. Eatme's writing, Doug Ford is what they would call in the United States a rhino. Republican in name only, conservative in name only, and that is true. He's been a big fan of Justin Trudeau. He's had Trudeau's back from the beginning, but that serves his political interest as well. Because when you're a conservative in Ontario, it's always beneficial to have the Liberals in Ottawa. If the Conservatives are in Ottawa, we always vote Liberal provincially. Koji Malik has something to write. I think establishing other relationships is good. Never be dependent on a bully country. Well, diversification is always the rule in any area of economics. You never want to have all your eggs in one basket. And we taught in 1988, we tied our can, as it were, to the U.S. economy. And there are trade barriers between our own provinces. It's harder in a lot of cases for the province of Ontario to send its products to Quebec or the Maritimes or out west. It's easier to send them to the States than to within our own country. Interprovincial trade barriers are massive, but we didn't worry about it. because the world's largest economy. I'm selling tons to them. Who cares if I screw over my fellow Canadians in Alberta or neighboring provinces? No, who cares? I got the world's biggest market, and we got a free trade agreement. Well, guess what? Should have been working on that, but that's our government for you. Short-sighted. Uh, I don't know what was bad. Danny's writing, welcome to the Grand Illusion. Come on in and see what's happening. Pay the price, get your tickets for the show. The stage is set, the band starts playing. Suddenly your heart is pounding, wishing secretly you were a star, but don't be fooled by the radio, the TV, or the magazines. Danny is saying hi to everyone, and Styx. And that was Styx, old 70s band. HM is writing one. I find amazing in doing genealogy and research is how many Americans I have in family. Many moved from Canada to US through the years. We both started out as British colonies. Our province of Quebec used to be New France. New France was conquered by the British, 1759, if memory serves. However, French Canadians are throughout emigrated in large numbers to the United States because French Canadian families were often 10, 12, 14, 20 kids to a family. And the population was too big than the economic opportunities allowed. And so a lot of French Canadians from Quebec emigrated down to the US. But the US already had a sizable French population. Louisiana was a former holding of France, sold Louisiana Purchase of 1803 during the era of Napoleon. Napoleon needed money to finance his militaristic endeavors, so he sold Louisiana, the Louisiana Purchase. Americans know it. The American history class, they learn it. Canadians, we don't even hear about it. But that's why you have Landry is a French name, but in the US it becomes Landry. And go to Louisiana a lot and down to Texas. Lots of French names down there. Bellinger. They say Bellinger. We say Bélanger. They just anglicize the pronunciation of all these names. But we are so incredibly closely linked. And of course, after the American Revolutionary War, not all Americans sided, or rather, not all the American colonials sided with the revolutionaries. Not everyone was on Washington's side. Some American colonists fought alongside or supported the British. And when the war ended, these individuals were referred to as loyalists. They had stayed loyal to the crown. And so Britain said, here, you can come up to what's left of British North America, what would later become Canada. You can come up to British North America, to Upper and Lower Canada. Upper Canada is Ontario, Lower Canada is Quebec, and we'll give you land, and and you can set up shop there. The area in which I live, Northumberland County, and especially further as you head down toward Kingston, this is Loyalist country. There's a college in Belleville called Loyalist College, and American and Canadians share a lot of the same ancestry. We're cousins. And if you're going to ask me to get mad at my cousins, nope, not going to happen. You know what? As a Christian, I haven't brought up my faith. As a Christian, I'm not going to hate. I'm not going to boycott. I'm not going to do any of this stuff. I'm not going to follow the stickers on the floor, to use that metaphor, because that, to me, it's the same thing. Boycott America. Follow the stickers on the floor. Wear a face diaper. Get lost. Reading, the 25th Amendment. That would be the amendment that allows, this is where I got my wrong prediction. I said there's an amendment in the US Constitution that allows the vice president, in tandem with other members of the cabinet, to declare the sitting president unfit for office and to give him the boot and replace him. And and the next in line after a president is removed or leaves, the next in line is the vice president. We saw it play out once in my lifetime in terms of someone leaving, and that was with Richard Nixon resigned the presidency. Automatically, Gerald Ford, his sitting vice president, became the president. Danny's giving Whale 10 points for an earlier comment. HM says those watching the CBC lack critical thinking, obviously. Well, not necessarily. I mean, just so long as you don't believe what they're saying. It's thanks to people watching CBC News Edmonton and recognizing that the image they were displaying in behind on their blue screen, green screen, whatever it is they use, that it was a mannequin. They were using their critical thinking skills, and they recognized that, ooh, scary image, which is how a large part of the population reacts. Oh my God, you see that? They showed a guy on a ventilator as they were reporting the COVID numbers. I don't want to end up on a ventilator. That was a mannequin. What? Mannequin? No, they didn't say it was a mannequin. Journalistic ethics requires that if they were to show a mannequin, they'd have to say, the image we're displaying on our screen is actually a mannequin. We want to show Edmontonians what a patient hooked up to a ventilator would look like. However, this is not a patient. This is a mannequin. If they'd done that, then it's ethical. They disclosed it, but they didn't. They didn't operate in an ethical manner. That is our news. That's CBC. That's CTV Global going to air with false allegations, demonstrably false. If they'd done any investigation, and they did the proper investigation, they knew they were going to air with garbage. They knew they hadn't dotted their I's and crossed their T's. They knew that they hadn't done the work required to go to air, but they went to air anyway because they wanted to get rid of Patrick Brown. They wanted to give us someone like Doug Ford, a high school drug dealer who will do whatever his masters tell him to do, because the guy isn't that bright. He's smart enough to read a teleprompter, and that's about it. And when you listen to Doug Ford talking about how he's going to protect Ontarians from this trade war in the U.S., he's employing much the same rhetoric that he used to say how he was going to keep Ontarians safe, and that the health and safety of Ontarians is of paramount importance during the COVID nonsense. It's the same basic rhetoric. Just take out COVID and put in United States or Trump. It's insane. Mish Christie, who I haven't seen on the channel for a while, good to have you back, is helping up the world. Well, is helping to wake up the world. Some. He's helping now. Some people woke up to the fact that Anthony Fauci, who had said that science says stay 6 feet apart, and then later was forced to admit, well, there was no science behind that. There was no science, no trials done, nothing. And so he admitted there was no science behind social distancing. Imagine if he'd said that in March or April of 2020. Should we keep apart? Well, there's no science supporting social distancing, helping with keeping away from people. There's no science that suggests that will help mitigate spread of a virus. Oh my gosh. We can hug again. We can shake hands and things like that. Maybe some people wouldn't want to, but I'll tell you something. I was shaking hands, hugging people when all this stuff was going on. I was going to people's houses who were strangers. There are some wonderful Christian communities in Ontario, and one of them in Aylmer, Ontario, invited me. I was told Come on down. We have a family that'll host you and your wife and your youngest. Bob's your uncle. God bless. Amen. We're there. Imagine that. When everyone else was scared to death of COVID, we, my family, my household, we were staying with strangers. Like I said, I get some things right. Got the US election prediction wrong, but I'm happy with the result. Whale is writing, Whale's all the way out in British Columbia, that his family worships the television, can't have a conversation with them. Nope, because they know, they've heard, they were, and you use the right word, worship. Thus saith the TV, thus saith the nightly news. And, God help the person who dares to contradict what the all-powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing, all-wise nightly newscast says. Oh my God. Let's see what Eat Me is writing. As long as Ford doesn't do something stupid like cutting electricity, we should be fine. He's still openly talking about embargoing our nickel, which is a vital component for the automotive industry. Now, apparently, that's been given a 1-month reprieve, but only within certain industry groups that are covered by the United States, Mexico, Canada Free Trade Agreement. The updated version that was updated during the Trump administration, the last one. I do not think we are going to be fine. Unfortunately, I mean, when the propaganda was all about COVID, it was around May or June that I started to recognize the fact that this was all getting geared toward building compliance, toward everyone accepting an intervention. I'll just put it that way. A certain intervention that if you didn't take it, eventually they told you would lose your job, or you couldn't get on a plane, or you couldn't sit down and have a cup of coffee because you didn't take the intervention. Now, the way I see things building, the direction, they're trying to build compliance around for something that is basically going to destroy the Canadian economy, facilitate the United States occupying Canada. You got to remember George Orwell's book, 1984. The world was divided into 3 principal political entities. First was Oceania. That was where the protagonist of the book, Winston, he was from Oceania. That would be the Western world. So Western Europe, North America, Great Britain, that's Oceania. Then the second part was Eurasia. Eurasia would be Russia and into, China, or maybe not China, but think of Europe, Asia. Think of the Eastern Bloc. Think of Russia, the Eastern Bloc, and parts of Asia. Then there was East Asia. That would be China. And I imagine that the rest of the globe, primarily Africa and South America, would be divided in there as well. And in this dystopian world, what happened was Oceania, the Western world, was always at war with one of the other two and allied with one of the other two. So they were either allied with Eurasia and at war with East Asia, or they were allied with East Asia and at war with Eurasia. So you had a constant war going on. And I think that I won't put the label prophet on George Orwell, but I think it's probable that Orwell may have had Masonic membership. He might have been a Freemason himself or connected with the Freemasons, and he knew the playbook. He got to see the playbook, to use a football reference, Chicago Bears. And you could call it a bit of a spoil. He published a spoiler alert. That's what I genuinely think. And interestingly, George Orwell died very young. He died somewhere in and around the age of 50, went into the hospital for something very routine and never came out. He got deathly ill and died. Now, is that to suggest a conspiracy in his death? Yes, it is to suggest it as a possibility. However, it has to be acknowledged, obviously. Sometimes people go into the hospital with minor ailments, and things do happen. People can die. Not everything has to be a conspiracy. Might be, might not be. Eat Me saying evening to everyone after commenting. HM is saying there's also the threat of China getting to US through the Canadian border. Oh yeah, absolutely. Do we have do we does Canada as a nation do we have Chinese operatives in our what Trump would refer to as the deep state? Within government agencies. Just prior to COVID, there were two Chinese nationals working in our national bio lab in Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's kind of like our top biohazard lab in the country. And they were fired, and no explanation was ever given. Trudeau has stonewalled. He has refused to tell Canadians or Parliament why these two Chinese nationals who were expelled from the country, what was the rationale? They've stonewalled on everything. And there are so many moving parts to what is going on. And right now, part of the machination is to get Canadians and Americans mad as hell at each other. And it's working. In Ottawa, Canadian fans were booing the U.S. national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. For my American friends, oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh gosh, I can't remember it all. I got to sing it, and you don't want to hear that because that's one thing. The Star Spangled Banner is such a tough thing to sing. It's very plodding. Francis Scott Key. Anyway, but I love my American friends. I did spend close to 10 years growing up in the United States. Canadians and Americans are far more alike than we are dissimilar. And we've been getting more and more alike ever since, the 1980s cable TV, our free trade agreement. Canadians don't say A nearly as much as we used to. Canadians used to say A, how's it going, A? What are you doing, A? I really noticed it in 1975 when we moved back from New Jersey the first time. When I moved back to the US, or sorry, when I moved back to Canada from the US after having spent most of my life growing up in the US, I was 9 years old, and I spent probably about a year. I'd spent 8 of my first 9 years growing up in the United States. And uh, when we moved back 1975 for a year and a bit, we moved to Burlington, Ontario, and I noticed a huge difference because all the kids I went to school with went, hey, what are you doing, eh? Come on, let's go play some hockey, eh? Everything was A. Never heard that in the US. And it comes for what it's worth. I know where it comes from. It's Scottish. At one time in English speaking Canada, the most commonly spoken second language was Gaelic because Canada has a lot of Scottish people, a lot of people of Scottish background. And Scots say, what are you doing, eh? Don't you do that, eh? A is a big thing in Scotland. Don't do that, eh? They say it all the time, Scots. And so that's where a large part of the English Canadian accent came from, was from a Scottish influence. And that's why we say, Americans always joke about Canadians. Oh, you're Canadian, you're going out and about, closed vowel sounds. Well, that's from Scotland as well. Out and about. What are you doing? Oh, I'm just going out. You're going out. Where are you going? So we got the closed vowel sounds, but because of cable TV and mass media, it impacts speech patterns. And so the Canadian accent has becoming more and more American for the last 30, 40, 50 years. We no longer say process. We say process, like our American friends. Pretty soon, I'm suspecting we're going to stop saying foyer and we're going to start saying meet in the front foyer. That's what they call the front entrance to a school. In the US, they call it the foyer. Canada, foyer, the French pronunciation. We've been, just keeps moving further and further. I'm rambling. Let's see. And Koji Malik, when I was talking about fentanyl coming across the border, Koji Malik is saying that, Trump forgot about meth. For what it's worth, I can't say I don't do drugs. Coffee is a drug. Nicotine is a drug. And I do smoke. And alcohol is a drug. And I will have a beer or a Canadian Club, a rye whiskey. I do drink socially on occasion, but not often. Not sure what that means. We've got all kinds of things being written. We got French being written. There's an interesting component to all this. How do Quebecers feel about becoming the 51st state, especially unilingual Quebecers who only speak French or who do not speak English well? Most Quebecers have some facility in the English language, a little bit, at least a little bit. Some, though, not. There are plenty of Quebecers, especially if you get out to, I don't know, Matane or La Tuque or Rimouski or Rivière-du-Loup or the Gaspésie. You get to the remote areas, and Chicoutimi, people do not speak English. There'll always be some people around who do, but a lot of people don't speak English. How they're going to feel about joining a country that just proclaimed English as the official language. Be interesting to see. Just catching up. And HM is writing that, in the 1920s forward, especially post-war, that a lot of Canadians went down to Michigan. A lot of auto workers would cross the border at Windsor and go and work in Detroit, Michigan, which was where the big three, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, were set up. And there we are. The United Empire was calling them loyalists, the UEL, United Empire Loyalists. Those were the Americans American colonists, or they weren't really colonists. By the time the Revolutionary War started, they're people who were fifth generation, sixth generation Americans, but they were American colonials, I think would be a better word. And they fought on the side of the crown. And then they came up, then they were given land grants up in Upper Canada, Lower Canada. Ontario was called Upper Canada, and Quebec was called Lower Canada. People will look at a map and Quebec's up here and Ontario's down here. Why is Ontario Upper Canada and why is Quebec Lower Canada? And the reason is because it's the direction of the St. Lawrence River. We're upstream, so we're Upper Canada, downstream because it flows down, the water flows down to the Atlantic Ocean. So Quebec being downstream was Lower Canada, Ontario being upstream was Upper Canada. Danny, I knew an American named Benoit, though he pronounced it Benoit. Yeah, Bellinger, Benoit, Landry. If you go down east, New Brunswick, where a lot of Acadians live, Landry, like Tom Landry, famous coach of the Dallas Cowboys. In the U.S., it's Landry, but in New Brunswick, Quebec, it would be Landry. And Bellinger, Belanger, a lot of names like that. And amen, Jesus is king, absolutely. And I'll tell you something, I have far more brotherly, affection towards my brothers and sisters in Christ in the United States than to fellow Canadians who are openly hostile to the gospel. And by openly hostile, I mean I don't hold any ill will toward anyone, but there are individuals who are not just opposed to the gospel good news of Jesus Christ, but who actively seek to have it shut down. We can't pray in our parliament building. Trump just had a cabinet meeting and a pastor prayed. If that happened in Canada, oh my God, a prayer. Let's see. Eat Me is writing that Tropicana is often at sale at Maxi. I'm not complaining. For those in English Canada, Maxi is the same as No Frills. It's a Loblaws branded store, which is the largest Canadian grocery chain. And they have many different, they've got No Frills, Independent, Loblaws, and I think even a couple more brands under the Loblaws umbrella. And I agree wholeheartedly with Koji Malik. It's good to get different perspectives. Absolutely. Listen to Al Jazeera. I do. Then I get the view from the Arab world. BBC, get a little bit of a British perspective. And one thing you got to really pay attention to is when all the media outlets are using the exact same language and the exact same terminology. Build back better. We have to build back better. The spread of false and misleading information online is a threat to our democracy. And then you flip on another different outlet, and they're saying the spread of disinformation online is a threat to our democracy. And you go to another one, the spread of disinformation online is a threat to, and they're all saying the exact same words. That should be the most obvious red flag that you're dealing with propaganda. We have to build back better. And when all the politicians are saying, we've got to build back better, we've got to build back better, we've got to build back better. It's time for a reset. We need to reset. The world needs a reset. When you keep hearing the same terms, this is called marketing. And marketing is just a nicer way of saying propaganda. Communist Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, your trusted source for news. Well, if they have to tell you they're trusted, never trust someone who says, I'm trustworthy. If they have to tell you that, should be another red flag why you never listen to, or why CBC, the only, when they give you the sports scores, 99.999% sure they're getting the sports scores right. I'll leave that one alone. Dan's ring, fine. I'm fine. Freaking insecure, neurotic, and emotional. What's John 5 saying? Since COVID, we have been in perpetual wars and conflicts, economics. We have, I think you could argue that we've been before COVID, that it was going on before COVID as well, but it wasn't in our face to the degree that it has been post-COVID. And had it not been for COVID, would I recognize as easily or as quickly the propaganda that's happening now around this trade war? And I think it's reasonable to say, no, I might not. I probably wouldn't have. I probably would have gone along. But COVID has opened my eyes. And even more than that, COVID has led me to, before COVID, I never read the Bible fully from start to finish. I'd read tons of it. I'd read entire books. I'd read many passages. I'd probably read 70 to 80%, just as a guess, of the Bible, but I never read it from start to finish and read everything. And during COVID, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I knew I was being lied to everywhere, and I wanted to get into some truth. And I read it I read it all the way through, and I'm reading it all the way through now as well. And I'm going to keep going. When I finish, I'm going to start again and just keep diving into the truth. In a world that's so full of lies, We need God's truth more than ever. Binary speaking, haven't seen you for the longest time. Good to have you back. John says, so we get a strong man every 50 to 100 years. Well, Danny is always great at pulling up these old quotes about how harsh times lead to harsh times, bad times build strong men. Strong men build good times. And then good times build weak men, and weak men lead to difficult times, but then difficult times, and it's a circle. Danny's writing, we seem more and more to be living in 1984. Constant surveillance, manipulation of language and history, suppression of individuality, and the omnipresent threat of Big Brother. Oh, yeah. Just going to try and catch up. Yeah, John is either, you probably wrote that before I said it, I just didn't see it. And we also have the fact that Chinese nationals, students, for example, were infiltrating liberal nomination proceedings, like an electoral or EDA, Electoral District Association, a riding association, the Liberal Party of Greater Vancouver West, or whatever riding, would be nominating a candidate, and there'd be an individual Chinese, Canadian citizen, but of Chinese descent, ancestry, whatever, and maybe even born in China, but as Canadian citizen, and then large numbers of it. There's something called stacking the convention, where you sign up a bunch of instant liberals. They sign liberal membership cards, then they get to vote in that riding association, decide who the nominee, who the candidate for the Liberals will be. And the CSIS and the RCMP detailed where they said that liberal nomination processes were being infiltrated by large numbers of individuals who were residing in Canada as students, but were Chinese nationals. You talk about the electoral interference. And do these individuals have ties back to the People's Republic of China, or whatever it's called, and the Communist Party of China? We don't know. And now we have the liberals allowing 14-year-olds to elect our next prime minister. And you can look that up on the Liberal Party website. Who can vote for the next prime minister when they elect the new leader? They're allowing 14-year-olds. Amy is writing, the reason why we went into an early election in 2022 is indeed to hide the entire Chinese lab fiasco. ROTA, the ex-speaker, Rhoda, the ex-speaker, wanted to bring this to light. Liberals tried to sue him. Yeah, it was silent, stonewalled. We'll never, And then we have Eat Me saying the Ukrainian Waffen was probably their way to boot him out. Onto the whole Ukrainian situation. I just want that war to end. I'm 100% lockstep with Donald Trump on that. Sorry, Zelensky. Russia, are they saints? No. Russia is not saint. They're not wonderful. Putin is not an amazing guy, but neither is Zelensky. They're both corrupt. Who's running Crimea? Is it the Russians or the Ukrainians? For the people living in Crimea, it's just a question of which brand of corruption and graft is going to be ruling the day. Will it be Russian corruption and graft, or Ukrainian corruption and graft? Either way, whether it's the Russians or Ukrainians who have control over Crimea or the Donbass, whoever has control, the power is still going to go out 4 or 5 times a day, because they can't keep the lights on. It's going to be bad either way. And sorry, Zelensky, if you want to defend your country, Canada has my little area. I meet Ukrainians every single day who left to get away from the war. That's how, so many Ukrainians fled, because they didn't want to fight for the country. And if it wasn't for the backing of the United States and even Canada, but really the US, if it wasn't for the backing of the United States in arms and money and training and everything else, war would have been over in weeks, maybe days. And now they're shutting off the tap. You want to keep fighting? Go ahead. Whale Oil saying, good point. Sing the Star Spangled Banner in French. Don't think I've ever heard that done. Oh my gosh. Yeah, good luck. Danny's saying it may be a benefit, the 51st state for Quebec. We flock to Myrtle Beach, Daytona, Florida, Miami, Tampa, Walt Disney. A lot of Floridians dislike French Canadians. And there's one aspect of French Canadians I dislike. One aspect that I dislike. French Canadians are cheap when they go abroad. Very cheap. They have a joke in Florida. What's the difference between a canoe and a French Canadian? A canoe tips. French Canadians don't tip. And what's ironic is tipping is part of the culture in Quebec. They expect tips in their province, but when they go out, when they travel elsewhere, go down to the States, they don't tip. And I find that hypocritical to expect tipping when it's part of the culture in Quebec. They expect a tip. If you go to a nightclub and they show you to your seat, that guy expects a tip. He expects $10, if not 20 by now. But they go down there to the US and they don't tip. And Whale Oil says BC flocks to Arizona, same thing. Whichever closer. When I lived in Portland, Oregon, the 1 year I lived there, the place everyone went to vacation there was Hawaii. It was just, and when, in Ontario, people all go down to Florida or Myrtle Beach. It's another popular one. HM, does anyone here think the 51st state is the beginning of the 10 kingdoms? Well, I'll leave that open to everyone else because I don't know what the 10 kingdoms refers to. I'm sure others do. John is writing, another powerful institution other than TV are doctors, are they not? Doctors are always right, they say. And the thing is, what was horrible during the COVID era is we had television there were competing views, as often happens in science in general and medical science in particular. There are often differing opinions. That's why you watch any TV show that gives a rendering of a hospital situation. You'll have doctors arguing over a course of treatment. One saying, what do you think? What do you think? And then the head doctor will say, this is what I think. Do you concur with me? And maybe you will, maybe you won't. You have differing viewpoints. But the TV and the media decided which one singular viewpoint was the only one that consumers of the news would be allowed to hear. And that is dangerous as hell. Let's keep going. John's writing, or is it whoever gives doctors their orders? Wonder who would give doctors their orders. Well, there is a company called Pfizer, which has been charged and fined billions of dollars over the years. And one of the things they've been charged with, you can check this out, PubMed, National Institutes of Health, NIH, Anthony Fauci's own, bribing physicians, Pfizer, bribing physicians. Follow the money. Danny, we need to stop funding Ukraine like last month. We cut off the money and that war ends. Because, and the corrupt, graft, dictatorial Ukrainian system gets replaced by the corrupt, dictatorial, graft-filled Russian system. Still a bad situation, no matter who's running it. Don't make me, don't put my, I don't want to be club of anything. Rome Mac making up the New World Order. Oh, okay. You're telling me what this club of is. It's a Club of Rome map. Okay, I know the Club of Rome, but I haven't dived deep into it to know that they divided the world up into 10 kingdoms. Lovely. Lovely. So North America's area number one, HM is saying. 10 kingdoms mentioned in the Bible. I'll have to go through that. I'll have to recheck Daniel. Yeah, I've said many times that prophecy can be hard. And that I tend to look at things from what I use that expression from 100 or 1,000 miles up. The broad view, not, so you don't see the minutia, you don't see the finer detail, because I find when you try and look in, that's when it's like blowing up a picture and it pixelates and things get fuzzy. I'd rather look at it from 1,000 miles up. What I see happening eventually is, we have two volatile situations happening right now: Russia, Ukraine, certainly, also Israel and all, right now, Gaza. That's looking like it's poised to blow up again. And what I think we're going to see happen eventually, and no prediction as to time, is the nation state of Israel being surrounded. Danny's saying, amen, with respect, I'm assuming, to the 10 kingdoms mentioned in the Bible or by the Club of Rome or both. I've got to look into Daniel into 10 kingdoms. I don't remember anything about 10 kingdoms, but that doesn't mean it's not there, even though I've read Daniel a few times. I love the bit about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego at the beginning. I love the bit about Daniel reading the writing on the wall. We all use that expression. He saw the writing on the wall, but most people don't know where it comes from. So I love the story of Daniel being thrown to the lions. There's a lot in the book of Daniel. Let's see what the last thing is. HM, everyone saying amen. Well, listen, I've gone on for an hour and 42 minutes. It's the first time I've tried this on multiple platforms at once. So I'm going to check and see if it published well to Facebook and to Twitter as well as to YouTube. Anyone who's stuck around this long, if you're not subscribed on the YouTube platform, I would appreciate it if you would. That's a request. And likes are always, thumbs up always help, because when you're an individual such as myself, not a big media footprint, no name to speak of, no one knows me, and trying to elbow my way into the social media space, very difficult, very crowded. And I don't think I have the predominating viewpoint opinion. I think voices like mine do get throttled. I don't think mine gets throttled that much. I don't want to be egotistical and think, they're trying to silence me. No, I'm not going that far. But at the same time, I don't discount the possibility that there could be some throttling. And from what I understand, things like likes, subscriptions, and comments, especially commentary in the comment field, that helps boost your visibility. The more eyes see a channel, the more chances you have to build your subscription base, and then your voice can get louder. Rather than being a fart in a hurricane, maybe I'll be a loud fart instead of a silent one. Let's just read the last few. A bunch is coming on now. John is likening things to the Chinese dynasties and the War of Three Kingdoms. There used to be more. HM is saying, I will try to find for you. Okay, the quote from Daniel, I'm assuming you're referring to. HM writes, didn't they have Canada, US, Mexico as zone one? That's what I thought. Well, HM was saying that North America was zone one. So that would include Canada, US, Mexico, and Central America. if North America is zone one. Whale Oil is writing, this is the longest running podcast I've participated in. I think, actually, I have gone over 2 hours. You missed one. I did go over 2 hours. And Binary, who knows the Bible very well as well, is writing 10 kingdoms in Revelation as well. Bang. And Revelation 17:12. Well, I have it here. I shouldn't say. There have been a couple times where I didn't have my Bible at hand, but I do tonight. And Binary is writing Revelation 17:12. I should mention to those of you who follow me on Facebook under my name, Gordon Causey, I don't have access to that account anymore. I can't get onto it. When my old laptop, I think the technical term is pooched. My old laptop got pooched, and so I had to buy a new one. And when I went to log in, I had to verify the account with my cell phone. But as everyone here should know, or I've said many times, I canceled my cell phone. I don't have one anymore. I don't, and even the old phone that I had, the S3, Samsung S3, that thing is 10 years old plus. Anyway, I needed to use that phone number. That was the phone number attached to my Facebook account, and I don't have the phone anymore, so I couldn't verify my account, and I can't seem to get back onto it. So I'm on my backup Facebook account. It's now my main one, and it's Gordy Canuck, Gordie, Gordy Canuck, Canuck, like the Vancouver Canucks. Revelation 17:12. Okay, you're referring to the beasts. Right. See, this is where we get into interpretation. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to perdition. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. So kings, nations, not an unreasonable interpretation. Just reading up. Yeah, and Danny's writing that the Club of Rome is also big on pushing this climate change stuff. Right, and thank you, Binary, for more 10 horns representing 10 kings. 10 kings would obviously represent 10 kingdoms. Another representation of kingdom obviously can be nation. So HM's glad everyone had a good time. Glad everyone joined the chat. And Binary has shut down her Facebook. Good for mental health. Ever since I lost my access to my main account. And I don't think there's anything, I don't think anyone, I don't think it's anything conspiratorial or anything like that. I just think it's a case where, the phone number to which I had it attached for security reasons, I canceled that phone. So now I needed that phone to get onto it on my new computer, and I can't. But I was able to get onto it from my backup account. I was able to revive that one. So good enough. Anyway, God bless everyone, as I like to end all my streams. If you're new here, and whether you're in the Word, whether you're following Jesus Christ, even if you're, whatever the case, I just ask you to receive these words. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you, and may the Lord grant you peace. And in this crazy, crazy world that we're living in, where it can be so hard to find truth, so hard to find meaning. And that's a big thing, meaning. If you're, what does this all mean? Well, God has a purpose for you. You are not just matter in motion. You're not a random accident. You're not just the product of time plus matter plus chance. Let that sink in. You are not matter and motion. And who defines the purpose? The maker, the creator, the king of the universe defines your purpose. And so you need to get in a relationship with him. And the way you do that is through his son. And I'll end it there. So that's a blessing I give at the end. And it's not my words, it's something that's written in the book of Numbers. And it was spoken over God's covenant chosen people, because God wants a relationship with you. So much so that he sent his son to die for you. And you can find out the meaning and the purpose. God has an advocate, the Holy Spirit. Connect with the Holy Spirit and find out. That's the only way you'll find out your purpose. You can get out the broad general meaning, but I'm convinced it is the Spirit that will guide you and give you the purpose. And it's his purpose, not mine, not yours. Anyway, God bless. Yes, I like this platform. I'm using something called StreamYard, and I like the functionality on here a lot, Binary. And Denny. Bonne nuit to the mountains. Night, y'all. Good night. End in the stream. And end. Good night, all.